Minutes of April 6, 2020. Did all the school board members get those minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
There they are.
all right. Someone want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve them as written.
Okay,
Second.
all right. And I think we have to do a
roll call
individual-
vote. So
Yeah,
if you want to call on everyone, Amy, that would be the easiest.
okay, so Mike,
Yes, I approve.
okay, Frank,
Yes, I approve.
Bill,
Aye.
Fran,
Aye.
and me, aye.
Who was the second on that?
I
Frank.
think
Oh, it was me,
Peter.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike
yeah.
Watto.
All right, privilege of the floor, number 1. Is there anyone that is on the call that would like to ask a question or make a comment?
You want to just put something in the chat if you'd like to. I don't see anything right now.
Okay. Well, I
The
want to
only-
thank, oh,
I have one thing. Can we have any, I know it has last day of school budget. Is there any update on the state? The state's position, where we are right now in this whole pandemic.
Like as far as remote learning or just guidelines or anything?
Yeah, just any kind of update that if you guys have anything, I would be interested if you had anything.
Amy, I can update and then Dan can jump in too as well as he oversees all the food service
Okay.
pieces as well.
Okay.
Just quickly, is that okay, Amy?
Mhm.
Okay. So we are meeting twice a week with the Commissioner of Education as far as what's allowable and not allowed. Right now, the discussion is really the end of school and how to celebrate 8th grade graduations, high school graduations, and beginning to talk about extended school year, summer school, and hinting towards, although there hasn't been a lot of talk or commitment either way on what's going to be allowable and what's not. Right now, we're obviously at the stay-at-home order still until May 31st, so there will be no kids in the building. We do not have school for the remainder of the year. What we're planning right now is a hybrid model in case they allow for 1 to 2 students to come in for possibly extended school year, which is for special education students. But right now we're planning it remotely just because we can't, there's a lot of what ifs right now. So we are planning as is, and basically if there's guidelines that are opened up, we will reconsider to maybe have folks in the building, but there's a lot that goes with that, including, the workplace itself, the flow of the building, the cleaning, what kids have missed. So we're really looking at what we need as a district and how to really, the reentry guidelines are very slowly coming out because there has been no commitment when we're gonna come back.
Okay.
So, but right now we work through April vacation. It is long, but we do appreciate that, just to kind of bulldoze through and do what we can. It seems that parents really like the structure to stay in place instead of having a week off and then getting everyone back on track. But right now, I think as far as what we're looking at is just really what we're going to do to celebrate the kids at the end of the year, especially our 8th graders and our high school seniors. So that's kind of where we're at, and then kind of simultaneously planning for summer school and extended school year in alternative ways.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
all right. Principal's report.
Hey there. Hi, everybody. It's good to see everybody looking nice and healthy. Kelly and I are continuing systems in place. We have tried to keep things as normal as possible in this new normal for us. Kindergarten registration, we have called all 31 parents who have signed up for Kindergarten Connections. We've guided them, they can download or they can pick one up during food distribution, or we can mail the registration. So we're just trying to get, at least get the registrations in, and then see how we can proceed with some screenings. Food delivery is going well. That may be talked about a little bit later, but checked in with Austin Jacobs, who is heroic in his efforts. And the average right now is about 100 per day. That's gone up as high as 130, and I think it dropped off a little bit one day when it was rainy out. So definitely something that has been important in the community. Today, we started the student items pickup, and again, Kelly is the master organizer. We have 400 students plus in this school, and we have almost 400 plus Hannaford bags with labels. So people are driving by, and we are distributing those. We have a great volunteer crew. So that is Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 7 a.m. to 1. People can come by and pick up things that may have been left in their lockers, shoes, or field hockey sticks, and all sorts of things. So I had mentioned this last time that we have regular Zoom meetings throughout the week. Tuesdays, we meet with the crisis team, which includes Jill Carroll, Dr. Quintal, Ryan Sheehan, Kelly, and myself. And we've asked teachers to let us know if there are kids that they're concerned about. So we're on top of that, making sure that kids who are at risk or families who are at risk, we've been pretty involved with. So that's been tight. We also meet with our wing meetings and our specialists. And on the ongoing, one of the ongoing agenda items are report cards. And the middle school is leaning toward going pass, fail, and then pass with distinction. They've outlined a very specific percentage of work, but there is also an element of compassion throughout this. So we're feeling good about the high school, about the middle school. Primary wing would like to stick with the regular report card and use NA or non-applicable if something was not taught during this trimester. And then the intermediate, we're still having the conversation on whether to go with the regular report card or a modified participation report. So a lot of thought and energy on that. Last Monday, Kelly and I met with the 8th grade parents, a team of 8th grade parents, to talk about what Kyla was talking about, the celebration ideas. So Kelly, you do such a good job of talking about the celebration. Do you mind chiming in here?
Not at all. So as Julie and Julie said, we met with the parents, great meeting, a lot of energy there as well. But a couple of, we're just, brainstorming and thinking of ideas. And so we landed on the idea of having basically a car parade. Each 8th grader would come down Old Ward Bridge Road, one car per family. And I have already reached out to Chief LaFave and Chief Morrison, Police and Fire, and they are, as their words, excited and honored to get involved and help us out. Might do, a little bit of a parade on Highland Street. We'll see about that, or just having them greet them at the top of Old Ward Bridge Road, and at the bottom, lights and sirens. We'd like to have as many of our faculty and staff line the hill coming down, where they can cheer on the kids, and noisemakers, signs, you name it. And then they would be able to roll through where they would meet up with Julie and teammate and receive their certificates and their awards. They're getting a yearbook and a video as well, and play it out that way. And then they would return back up through the hills. So it seemed to go over well with the parents. They like the idea. Right now it's contingent on our last day of school. And fine details here and there, but that's the gist of what we were thinking of doing for the kids.
Kelly, if anyone from the board can help in any way, please let us know.
Sure. Bring your silly string.
Okay.
The fun thing is parents asked if they could decorate their cars. I said, that'd be great if every family came down the hill with their car decorated. That'd be fun.
So good energy.
Mhm.
I would like to thank our community partners, Katie and ETC Educational Theater Collaborative, for their significant support to families and learning. Katie hosted Lynn Lyons this past Thursday, and Lynn is an expert on anxiety, and she specifically spoke to COVID-19 anxiety. She walked through strategies such as humor, structure with flexibility, and staying in communication, staying in touch. Rave reviews from families that we've talked to, very helpful. And then ETC has sent out 20 YouTube videos for Tiger. And Tiger is the guidance and social emotional program that we and many other schools use. So we appreciate these organizations' action-oriented support. And lastly, PES Strong. Art teacher Alexis Einen and librarian Beth Wilkie have partnered with the Museum of the White Mountains. They have created a powerful display of PES educators and families sending messages to students and families. The display is called Words at the Window and is being showcased through the museum's fridge, so online at the Museum of the White Mountains. I'll be sending that link out on the newsletter, and thank you to everyone who submitted a picture and a message, and people are still, there is a way to do that when you go to their website. So that's it. Any questions? Awesome. Thank you.
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
Kelly, do you have anything that you want to add?
Yes, I'm very lonely without sports in my world. But just in terms of that, Jess Marinowski's been great, and her and I have been working together to try to forge ahead to plan for normal when we get there. So I already had a couple of parents drop off registrations for fall sports, and all the events are posted on the website. Registration forms are there, or we have hard copies at the school that people can swing by and pick up. We also have a tentative sports physical date set, and fingers crossed that maybe all of this will happen. That's my hope.
Perfect. Thank you. So a couple of discussion items. The last day of school.
So yeah, we're at that time where we're looking towards the last day of school, so we have to determine that. We are going to all of the school boards at this point, recommending as an SAU, June 5th as the last date. But it's a board decision to change the calendar, so it is a discussion item, of course. The high school is anticipating on possibly getting out a little bit earlier, given their school board approval tomorrow night. So June 5th is a Friday. We had April vacation. We worked through April vacation. And so in the state of New Hampshire, you can go by hours or days. So we calculated the hours, and as an administrative group came up with this date. Now, we also looked and surveyed the Plymouth community on whether or not, it is a district we're an SAU, but I always say it's always unique to everybody chooses their own deal, which is fine. But we sent out a survey asking parents if they wanted to get out what's the following, the 10th,
The 5th or
which
the
would be, what was it, the 10th, Julie?
The 11th. Yeah.
The 11th, I'm sorry, whatever that date is, which is 180 days that the kids would go to school. And then, so we asked for preference. So Julie, did you want to review the survey results?
Yep. I sent that out last Friday, April 24th. We sent the survey out Just simply asking, would you prefer June 5th or June 11th? And as of today, 200 people responded, 84.2%, or 170 people responded June 5th, 15.8%, 32 people responded June 11th.
11th, that's what it was. Yep.
And we also talked to PEA and reviewed with the teacher the idea and continuing the conversation about the professional development that would happen.
The following week for math. Yep. So I'll kind of hand it to you, Amy, if you want to have a discussion and kind of your thoughts and the board's thoughts of how you'd like to move forward.
So, I'm not at home remote schooling my kids. So for me, I'm not really in the thick of it. So I'd like to honestly hear from some parents to see, my concern is that students are already going to be behind being in remote learning atmosphere. So I know a week isn't going to make that much of a difference, but that's a concern of mine that they're going to be even further behind. And I know it's just a week, but they're already going to be behind. So it's more catch up that they're going to have to do on the other side. So that's my concern personally. But like I said, I'm not at home homeschooling my kids. So I don't really have, I can't really say one way or the other how it's going because I'm not doing it. So I'd like to hear from some parents and some other board members, see what their thoughts were.
Does anybody want to speak? I can.
Sure. Amy, actually, I asked Xander the same question and he had the same thought as you. I'm already behind, Mom. Can we go to the 11th? Because I feel like I'm still going to be behind and I'm going into high school and I'm worried. That said, we did vote for the 5th just because I think we're tired and exhausted and ready for a break. So,
Hey, so
as a family, we were split.
Yeah.
if I can comment, I think I'm concerned about kids being behind, but I think the reality is that this is not like your kid was out with an injury for 6 weeks. Everybody's going to be behind where they probably were. I think next year, whenever we get back to school, there's going to be a period of time that everybody's going to spend to kind of get caught up to where they would have been. I'm not convinced that 4 or 5 days makes that much difference, quite honestly. It's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Mike and Sarah. Like you, our family's split. I thought the 5th, based on the hours that the teachers have worked, the extra time they put into getting remote learning up and going as quickly as they did and as well as they did, and also, quite frankly, the strain on families. Just looking at my own family, I'm seeing a lot of extra effort being done without the structure of the school day being there. The same work that could be done in school is taking a lot more effort to get done. So yeah, I also think the 5 days, in the big scheme of things, like Mike said, everybody's going to be, if you're behind, you're the same amount behind going into the next school year.
Okay.
It's not an ideal situation, but I think it's what we're dealt right now.
Okay. Kyla, are you looking for a vote from the board?
I am, because we are going to start planning 8th grade. We're going to kind of lock that in and communicate with parents as quickly as possible to make sure that we get the word out and plan accordingly with the 8th grade celebrations and everything that there's videos involved, there's all kinds of stuff. So, and with the teachers. So it's just something, as soon as we're getting approvals, we are communicating with parents.
Okay. So someone on the school board want to give me a motion?
I'll move that we finish the school year on June 5th.
I'd second that.
Okay. So Fran,
I'm in favor.
Mike, you got to unmute yourself.
It's all right. I'm in favor.
Okay. Frank,
Yes, in favor.
Phil?
In favor.
Aye.
Very good. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Budget updates with Dan.
So I'm
Or
gonna
are we done? Sorry.
Yeah, we're done. I'm going to share my screen. Dana's going to speak to just where we're at. It's May. We like to kind of do checks and balances of where you're at this year, because it is very different, because we did stop kind of mid-March with some bills and some with not. So it's just, he's going to kind of give you a state of the state right now as far as the budget snapshot. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.
Yep.
So right now, what I'm looking at our expenditures, our revenues are in fine shape, which is good news. Right now, I would project, all things being relatively constant, a fund balance in the neighborhood of about $370,000. There are a couple of, there are some significant reasons for a number that large this year. The three biggest ones being savings and health insurance, and shifting student population and the SPED population, which Kyla could certainly speak to better than I can.
Yes. Go ahead. You can do the whole thing.
Yeah, so I could run down the list here item by item if people want to go through the detail. I could answer questions offline independently if people have questions. But as you can see, there's some very significant numbers in this in the health insurance and SPED area, and some other numbers. Before we go through that detail, if anyone wants to, I would just like to move over to the left side of the screen for a moment. And what you're seeing is what our financial management software says right now as of this moment. And this is after today's manifest was processed, okay? So we only have one more manifest in June. But all wages and things are already encumbered, so they're already accounted for in this regard. But with a balance of $321,000, I would add about another $50,000 to that. I see a number of purchase orders being liquidated, so those are numbers that are currently encumbered that we would liquidate because we're not going to spend the money. That number, I think, will actually grow a little bit over the next 30 days, and I'll report back to you again, obviously, in your June meeting when we have a tighter handle on it. A couple of things that you might want to think about, and you could certainly come back to us at the June meeting if you want to have more discussion about it. The other potential adjustment area, the SRO, which is the school resource officer, she's still working on the school's behalf. The full commitment that was made in the budget through a warrant article is already taken out of this projected balance. But there may be an adjustment from the town if she's not doing the full 180 days that was part of the original contract, and that would add to a fund balance. The other piece is, and this might be a good conversation for either us or either a school board member or to have with the town, or us to have with the after-school program. The after-school program is supported through the school's general fund to the tune of $30,000 a year, and that full $30,000 is already encumbered or taken out of this balance. But with the after-school program not operating for roughly a third of the year, would it be appropriate to withhold a portion of that payment? Now, I'm assuming that if we withhold a portion of that payment, it's revenue that the program then doesn't get, but did they have the expenses that they need the payment for? And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds there, but it's just something to consider. If you have questions about that, or a direction you'd like me to take in those conversations, I can certainly move in any direction you wish. Other than that, if you have questions about specific items on the right side of the screen, we can talk about it. Or
we can briefly go over some big numbers, for instance.
So for example,
go ahead.
Do you want to take it? Me? Okay. So the first line item there was a new position that was in the budget for the current year, and as for a variety of reasons, at the start of the school year, it was recommended that the position not be filled because the funds might have been needed for some other unanticipated expenses. And that's why that line is showing that amount as unexpended for the current year. The next line down, you have had an over expenditure in your substitutes line, and that's largely due to a number of maternity leaves. Health insurance, we don't generally see an under expenditure of health insurance this size. I can tell you that 2/3 of that number is a result of underutilization of the funds available for deductible related expenses. When your teachers association moved to a new health insurance plan, the board agreed to fund the deductible 100%. And that is done through something called an HRA, or health reimbursement program. And so if we budget for the full exposure, if you will, on a contract by contract basis, but if the deductible services are not needed, if the payment is not needed to reimburse for deductibles claimed, the money stays with the district. And that's what 2/3 of that large number is. The other third would have to do with plan changes, individual contracts changing structure.
The next few I can go over.
Sure.
So the next several lines are related to special education. As you know, population moves in and out, and we did have quite a bit of movement this year. So the special ed purchase services would be, for example, autism services. So that's just base per IEP. So if a student moved out, then it wasn't expended. The big number that you see there, the special ed tuition. So that's your out of district students. So that could have been, I can't really review it because there's so few kids involved with that number, but it could be a court movement or a move out. So typically out of district placements do run about, if you're out of the district, about 100,000 or more. Special ed equipment, so that's just underspent a little bit. That's anything from furniture to other adaptive equipment that we may need. Just jump PD is professional development. That's tied to the collective bargaining agreement. So that's dictated by that piece. Special ed aids, we did go over. So you could see, for instance, if a student did not go out of district and we came in, we're spending on the child having more support in the school. So they kind of flip-flop as far as that goes with the move. Same with preschool, that depends on the population. So that was overspent. So there's an influx of students.
Could I jump in on one line item for a second?
Yep.
You will, similar to that, you will also see a much higher revenue number on the preschool side. So they will balance out in the net accounting at the end of the school year. Through the IDEA, there's going to be enhanced revenues to make up for that.
Yep. ESY is extended school year, also tied to special education. ESL, English as a second language, so that again is a moving population. So there was just a bump in the need for English as a second language. Co-curricular, so these are your any spring stipends that were not paid out because we didn't have any spring co-curricular pieces. School board just didn't have spent the supplies. The nurse, you could see we haven't been billed for the months that we have been in remote instruction. So and we won't be billed for that. So that's a savings of $36,485. Athletics. Do you want to go over the next few?
Sure.
Dan?
Athletics are some short, obviously the spring coaches are not being paid. I think if we did our spring sports, that line would have been overexpended.
Mm-hmm.
The ADM salary, that has to do with, typically when we build a budget, we build non-bargain positions at the prior year's salary and run through a process of scraping together the money to provide raises, because the raises are granted after the budget is already approved. So that line is rather typical to run in negative. The next two lines, software IT, some enhanced purchases needed for computers and some other devices. There was a renewal on some licenses. We expect to see some of these next two lines both compensated for with the CARES Act funding. A lot of money in R&M for cleaning the buildings extensively and supplies used to do that. Construction services, this is mostly about the phase 1 of the security grant that was approved for the current year in the prior year, coming in under budget, and that also, those grant funds have been received that covered 80% of that cost. Fuel, oil, electricity, telecom, these are just costs under budget, to be quite honest. And there'll be another 13,000 coming for that, as you see on the other side. It was a fairly mild winter from a heat perspective. And also with the buildings being virtually shuttered since the middle of March, we're seeing certainly much lower electric bills. Special ed transport, once again, you can see where that would tie to the out of district number above, the sped tuition number above, pulling back and bringing people into the building, which is why the sped aids may go up. And then the field trip athletic transport number, simply trips not happening this spring.
So it's a little weird this year based on our situation. Any questions from the board?
Kyla, I have a question. How much money is the board, are we allowed to carry over to the next budget?
So you can, so typically there's two reasons. Well, you can't really carry over any of it depending on, so that's the easy answer. But if you have an unanticipated emergency special ed issue or a safety issue, or sometimes are the only two reasons that you can consider that piece. Plymouth Elementary passed a warrant article this year, right, Dan, that they can take a portion of their fund balance and put it into the capital improvement reserve.
We did.
I don't recall that article on the warrant, and it might just be my scattered brain working through all the different warrants. But I'm did we have that on the warrant this year? I can certainly look it up very easily.
I think we did.
Okay. Well, I apologize for my
No, that's okay.
scatterbrain at the moment. But if there is a warrant article to move funds into any potential fund balance into a capital reserve fund, that would come off this balance that we're projecting here. The number $50,000 is suddenly coming into my mind. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, it is. I have it.
It just takes. I'm just a little older than you, Kyle. It takes a while for my brain to.
I'm there with you, Dan. Hey, I have a quick question for you. In regards to the CARES Act, like with healthcare institutions, we're able to collect up to well, in some cases, depending on the institution, up to 125% of CMS billing for the previous 6 months to help kind of bridge over more with hospitals and ASCs and things like that. Our schools, do you know, I know we bill Medicaid and Medicare for services, or Medicaid for services. Are we able to do that?
A huge issue this year, Frank, that many of our districts are facing a significant shortfall on their budgeted Medicaid revenue. Due to a federal audit of the New Hampshire Medicaid department, some emergency rules were put into place in August that are still being worked through, and that severely curtailed our ability to bill Medicaid for many of the services we used to.
Okay.
And that has to do with the nature of who was writing the order for it. It had to be a licensed. Kyla could speak to this better than I can.
So the new rule, and it was an emergency rule, which is why we couldn't recoup the funds, is that typically a speech therapist could create the order, or basically a therapist of the healing arts. Now they require a physician to give the order. So that doesn't happen typically at an IEP meeting. So they've been, the special ed directors group have been working through that, but basically we weren't able to recoup for a while because there was no way to do that. So we just started recently submitting for reimbursement again, because they did tweak it a little bit so we can make it work for the schools. But that's typically a source that we gain a lot of revenue from. But that's not part of the emergency,
CARES
the
Act.
CARES.
Yeah.
The CARES Act.
Okay.
And I guess another question that I would have is that, I know you can't get into any of the details, but would you anticipate that we would possibly need to have money set aside for kind of unanticipated compensatory education because we weren't able to provide certain services? Is there going to be push
That's
for that?
definitely, That's definitely something that we are going to be talking about for the next month with Kim DeSabo, the director.
Okay.
But that is something. So for those of you that aren't familiar with compensatory education, it's for special ed students instruction. So if it's in their IEP, for instance, that they see someone, a teacher in a regular ed setting, which is a classroom, right now we don't have that availability to do that. So we provide a service, but some parents will ask for additional services to kind of make up for the services lost. So that is an unanticipated amount that we're unsure of at this point, as far as that goes. But that's something we can talk about at our June meeting, Fran, as far as, you know, Dan would come back and we talk about, okay, the board would then have to decide how much to give back, if that was a consideration this year, to offset that piece, and then as well as any safety issues or unanticipated special ed issues. Dan, did I?
Yeah, I think that's valid. And I just, you know, I just want to make sure that everyone understands as we move towards that conversation in June, just to be really clear, the larger the number is in the fund balance, I know we typically want to keep tax rates level and not have a big fund balance, but just for those newer on the board to recognize that any fund balance, the direct effect of a fund balance is reducing the amount to be raised in taxes next December. And given the larger economic climate in this pandemic world, I think it's really worthy of some very serious consideration on the board's part. It becomes a tougher conversation to have next fall when you're talking about the following year's budget and the taxes to be raised in the fall of 2021. I understand, because it'll be a bigger jump if we have a dip this year. But it's something to be cognizant of how this affects the money that people are going to have to pay out of their pocket for taxes this coming fall.
Right.
Thank you, Dan.
Hey,
Kyla.
before we go on, Amy, so Dan,
Yes.
does that clarify that means they're going to pay less this fall out of pocket for taxes?
So when you do your budgeting each fall, the last page is always what's called the revenue page.
Yep.
And it starts with, there's a whole bunch of different revenues listed that come off that number of what's called the appropriation of the spending authority, called the $8 million number. And the net of the budget minus those revenues is how much what's called the district assessment, if you go back to your work papers.
Mm.
The fund balance starts at zero when the budget is built and put before the voters, et cetera. It's projected as a fund balance of zero. So if we add let's say that year ended today and the fund balance was $371,000, the number on the screen that Kyla shared, that would be a revenue in the following year. People sometimes have conversations about what you give back. The school district doesn't really give the money back to the town, but it's counted as a revenue for the following year, thereby lowering the tax rate. So this would be $371,000 less that would be built into next fall's tax rate to be raised by the town in the form of property tax bills, yes.
Okay.
That makes sense?
It does. I mean, seemingly in the short term, that's a good thing, but then fall of 21, when it goes up potentially,
It's a difficult conversation. Yeah, it's a challenging conversation, but I think it's one that's worth having.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions for Dan or Kyla from the board? No? Okay. Other business? Any other business?
I don't have anything.
Okay. And how about privilege of the floor number 2?
So I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
Nope.
No one wants to say anything tonight? Fair enough.
Oh, unless I'm missing something.
I know. Like, looking for hands raised, people waving.
I don't know.
I have a question.
What's that, Sarah?
I have a question.
Okay, shoot.
Do you have an update on the reading specialist and or additional teacher?
So the board approved the hiring of a reading specialist at the last board meeting.
Oh, I
So
missed
we are in a search right now. We are down to the finalists, hoping to have a candidate selected by the end of the week, once references are checked. So we got some great candidates too.
Good.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Thanks for asking that question, Sarah, because that was on my mind to ask too. All right. So consent items, claims and payroll.
So that you got online, so you can just respond to that virtually.
Okay. And any correspondence?
I did not receive any correspondence.
Okay. So need to make a motion. Someone want to make a motion to go into non-public?
No motion.
Seconded.
Okay. Fran,
Aye.
Mike,
Yep, aye.
Frank,
Aye.
and Phil.
Aye.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming to the meeting. We're going to go into